you don't always get the house that you want, right? And one thing that we learned to do is when you lose that initial deal or something goes wrong, that was the time that we would send a gift card. Not when everything went great and we won and we're closed, but let's give them something when the emotional level has plummeted, because that changes the experience.
You're listening to the Profit by Design podcast, episode 47. You work hard in your business. On the Profit by Design podcast, we ask the big question. What has your business done for you lately? Hi, I'm Dr. Sabrina Starling, the business psychologist, the author of How to Hire the Best, and your co-host on the Profit by Design podcast. Weekly, my co-host, Mike Bruno, and I bring you tips, tools, and strategies from our own experiences and from the experiences of our guests, who are entrepreneurial thought leaders and real-life entrepreneurs, all to support you in making intentionally profitable and sustainable business decisions to live the lifestyle you desire. Is your business running your life? Are you fed up with working crazy long hours only to lay awake at night worrying about cash flow or feeling totally angry and frustrated over what your team isn't getting done? If so, listen up. I've got something I want to share with you. At Tap the Potential, we have our small group coaching program that is designed for business owners just like yourself who are done. You're done with the way things are going and you're ready for a change, and not just any little Band-Aid change. You want a life-changing business transformation. That's what we specialize in at Tap the Potential. We turn life and cash-sucking small businesses into highly profitable, great places to work. And then we send those business owners on a 4-week vacation while the business runs without them. If that sounds good to you, I invite you to check out our small group coaching program at Tap the Potential, where we integrate Profit First, the Pumpkin Plan, and my book, How to Hire the Best, into our small groups to produce these transformations. All the while, we're working with you to be the leader you need to be to create this business that can run on its own while you have more life. Check us out, tapthepotential.com. Profit Designers, on today's episode, I'm bringing you a conversation between myself and Andre Ong. I met Andre about 4 or 5 months ago through Donna Lyons. Andre came and spoke to the Preventive Strategists, and he shared some things in that conversation that I thought were very eye-opening that we entrepreneurs need to be thinking about in terms of making sure that our business is really taking care of us in the future, which, as you know, on the Profit by Design podcast, we are all about what has our business done for us lately. And in getting to know Andre, one of the things that I discovered about him is he is a huge fan of Profit First and Pumpkin Plan. He gives these books out at every opportunity to help other entrepreneurs. So I really appreciate that about him. And as I've gotten to know him, we've gotten into a really interesting conversation around integrity in business. And that's what we're going to focus on in today's conversation on the Profit by Design podcast. But I also want to let you know, as we dive in and look at integrity and the relationship between our business systems and how our team members play into integrity, we also then go into a pretty good discussion about what Andre would have done differently if he'd known about Profit First and pumpkin planning when he started his business. And there's some good aha moments in this one. And we also talk about what's it like to partner with your spouse and run your business. And Andre has some really good words of wisdom around that. So with that, I want to introduce you to Andre. Andre Ong is a serial entrepreneur with no hope of breaking the habit. He and his wife, Angela, have worked together since 2001 when he offered to help her pass her real estate exam because he needed an angle to date her. They were married in 2002. Having both been previously married, Andre now has 4 children, technically stepchildren, but he's not a very technical sort of guy, and 7 grandchildren, ranging from ages 13 years to 4 months. Andre is 43. Past endeavors include managing foreclosures, managing and supervising maintenance for rental property, and working with real estate investors, which is sort of like being an agent with Men in Black, according to Andre. He was a military chaplain while working into financial services, where he currently focuses his energy. But because of compliance, we can't say much more than that. He and Angela also founded a nonprofit to work with service members and autistic children. They have an autistic grandson, along with Diverse Management Solutions, a company that allows them to provide services and wisdom to other entrepreneurs. Andre and Angela have fully gutted and renovated 3 homes. Their first one they renovated while sleeping in a tent on the deck for a few months. He's also a horseman and has incorporated equine-assisted learning as part of his work with service members. Oh, and he has 2 master's degrees, so he's a nerd too. Andre brings together a scholarly nature inherited from his father, a nuclear and chemical engineer, with his experience in the trades and business to the people he assists today. So with that, let's get into our conversation with Andre. I've been thinking about something. Would you buy your own business? I mean, knowing what you know, with all your experience and inside knowledge, would you buy it? And if so, what would you be willing to pay for it? And would you be happy leaving you as the manager to run it for you? I'm guessing these questions might be making you feel a little bit on the spot. Why is that? Well, for most of us, our businesses, where we spend most of our time and all of our time thinking about, represent the single largest investment of our lives, and possibly next to our home, our greatest asset. It's the source of our income, the storehouse of our creative talent and our relationships, and it's the determinant of our future freedom and prosperity. This business, your business, is too important for you not to give it the best chance of success. And that's why I'm excited to share with you a special course that's being offered by Sir Stephen Wilkinson. Entrepreneur as Investor, How to Calculate Your Stock Price. Now, you may remember Sir Stephen from episode 41, and if he got you thinking and wondering about calculating your stock price, you're going to want to check this out. His course is starting September 5th, and there's only 15 spots available at the time that I'm recording this. Sir Stephen is offering a special savings for our profit designers. You can get into the course at 50% savings by using code TAP2019, TAP 2019. To access this course and learn all the details, go to tapthepotential.com/investor. So Andre, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you. It's great to be on. Looking forward to it.
I think we're going to have a fun and interesting discussion here. You have quite a background, and just, I shared your bio with our listeners, and I want you to tell me a little bit more about you helped your wife pass the real estate exam because you needed an angle to date her. Like, how did that work out? How did you do that?
Okay, yeah. So I was a real estate agent. I had just helped a broker in the St. Louis area open a new office. Actually, he and his brother had brought RE/MAX to St. Louis. They were the original franchisors here. And from what I understand, they did that simply because his brother wanted to be a state rep and needed business credibility to do that. So it worked. And now he was, downsizing. But we were at a point where we needed more agents. And I ran into this really wonderful lady at a small group from church one night who needed a babysitter because her 2-year-old daughter was very sick and she needed to go to a job interview. So being a real estate agent, and if you ever see people golfing in the middle of the week, they're probably real estate agents. I had time on my hands. So I offered to babysit, which this became a funny story because Bella woke up from, trying to sleep off this sickness, saw me, screamed bloody murder, and went back to sleep. And I always tell her that that's how we met. So when Angela came back, they wanted to hire her, but there was an issue. She felt like it was actually a project that was not completely above board and didn't want to be a part of it. So I suggested she become a real estate agent because we needed agents. And I also thought that would be a great way to spend time with her because there's the whole exam you have to pass and time you need to study. So I offered to help her study. And yeah, that worked.
So, I'm all about how to hire the best and recruiting team members. So it sounds to me like, Andre, you spotted an A player, not just for a team member, but also as a wife. And
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Here's what's really funny about it. It went great. And actually it was one night after we had been studying for a couple hours that she suggested she had a pool table in her basement. She suggested that we play. And actually, she suggested that she beat me. That's what she said. We went down and she completely threw the game, so obviously missed every shot. And I couldn't play pool to save my life. So that's when I knew we'd be getting married. And she got her license. And within about a month, she was teaching me how to do that business. She was such a natural at it and had such an acumen for it that I really she became the front person. And I ran operations and marketing and everything else. And she worked with the clients. And that's mostly where I learned everything I learned about how to communicate with people in business. I can't tell you how many times she would make me edit emails and text messages to make sure that what I sent sounded like her and stayed consistent with her voice. So that if you get a message from her, you're talking to her, it's the same person. That she's hammered that into my brain. And I've noticed that it's very important. So yeah, most of probably what we're going to talk about, I probably learned from her, along the way. But that's how that whole deal got started. I never wanted to be in real estate either. I considered it the family curse. I left for college. I went to Bible college. My intent was to become a pastor. And when I left, I swore two things. I would never move back to St. Louis, and I would never be in real estate because my parents, my grandparents, my step-grandparents, my uncles, they're all in some form of real estate. And I wanted to do nothing with that. I finished college and I couldn't get a job. So I moved back to St. Louis to be a real estate agent for my family. And that's how that got going.
Wow. And you two have worked together since 2001.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something that comes up a lot with our clients, husband and wife teams working together. What are some tips that you might give about how to make that work well?
I think the one thing that I've really started realizing is that the little spats and fights are the growing pains of figuring out how to do this. Because I hear a lot of people say we can't work together. We can't spend that much time together. We just end up fighting. And we did too, a lot. And I realized after a time, this is how we're learning. This is how we're working out the tensions. It's not us. It's the tension of trying to work together and bringing all that personal life into it as well. And if you can just accept that that's part of the process and work with each other instead of fight with each other, for the family and for the business, which is why we wanted to work together. It gave us the ability to say, yeah, we've got appointments, but we could have a mini date in between, and we can do a lot more together. But then there's also sometimes I would say that you have to even schedule some time to get individual projects done separately. When we spend all day in the car, one of us gets to take phone calls, but not both. So it's tricky. Who's going to answer the phone? Because I don't know why everyone calls us at the same time.
And so what you said about instead of fighting each other, fight together for the family, for the business, that's powerful.
It's a lot easier said than done, but yeah, that's the mindset you have to get.
Well, and you got me thinking about it because I know for myself, I'm the lone business owner. I don't have a spouse involved in my business. And so I have growing pains that I go through in my business, and I get cranky and frustrated. And I can easily see if I had a partner, I would be thinking, well, it's so easy to project all of that onto a partner. And, I don't have a choice to do that. I just, I'm like, oh, my business is driving me crazy. These things are frustrating me. But when you have a partner there, it's too easy to project it on them. So that heightened awareness of, no, we're not going to fight each other as we go through these growing pains. We're going to fight together as we grow.
Yeah, I think that's really important. The other thing is when you're working together, so if you go to work, you put in whatever your 8, 10, 12-hour day, whatever it is, and you have those stresses and you have the setbacks. When you come home and talk about it with your spouse, you'll spin it in a certain way. And since they weren't there, they're most likely going to favor your perspective on what happened. You can't get away with that when you're working with your spouse. Like she can say right away, yeah, I see, like you're saying that, but you were supposed to, take care of this, this, and this, or it should have gone this way. And that's how we did it. And you can't get away with anything. You realize you're going to have to do it well or own up to the fact that this was your responsibility. Now, if something seriously goes wrong and it's completely out of your control, then you have each other as a support.
Yeah.
To rely on and discuss. So.
Yeah, and you cannot hide from the truth when you have somebody there. And it sounds like you two have a very strong relationship and strong trust in each other. And to be able to accept that feedback from your spouse about, hey, there's another side to this scenario, and maybe you need to look at these things too. That's really powerful to have somebody there doing that for you.
Probably how both of us managed to grow as much as we did, in the time that we've been together. But I wouldn't say I accept everything right away, but I get around to it.
Yeah. Well, and you know what you mentioned earlier about what she taught you about business communications kind of ties right into where we wanted to take our conversation today. And that's the topic of integrity. And so let's just talk a little bit about, how do you define integrity, Andre?
So a few synonyms I would put down. Reliability means the company and the business and the people within it are reliable. They're dependable. Images that come to mind are sure-footedness. If you step there, it's going to hold. Maybe if you're thinking about walking on a frozen lake, you're not sure about it. But once you know that it's certain, and you know that top frozen layer has integrity, you're willing to walk across it. It's trustworthy. A couple analogies that come to mind that if you've ever been in a position where you have a couple tall ladders and you put up a walkboard between them, you see these guys doing this when they're painting tall buildings or doing siding. That first step, anytime I've done that, for me it's a nerve-wracking. It's not until you've walked it a few times that okay, this is going to hold, that this has integrity built into it. And then the other thing which I really was thinking about this morning was rock climbing. If I'm on the edge of a cliff, if I'm on the side of a cliff or anything like that, I don't like heights. I don't want to be close to that edge until you clip me into a belay line. And once you're on a belay line, that means there's someone else on the other end whose entire role and position job is to hold on to that line. If anything goes wrong, they're going to catch me. I can trust the rope. I can trust the harness. And if I can trust that person, that there's not going to be an issue, I have no fear of heights at all. I can climb. I can rappel. I can swing around. I'm fully confident. Now, the first time I went rock climbing was actually with the youth group. Our youth leader looked down and his wife was belaying him, and she started swatting flies and mosquitoes while he was halfway up the cliff. He came down and would not climb anymore at that point because the integrity was gone. He was like, everything else is fine, but if she's not watching, even for a second, I'm not sure I can do this.
Oh, I can share a funny dating story that ties right into this. So way back in the day when I was in college, I got certified to scuba dive, and we had to do our checkout dive, and you have to have a partner. And my partner lost sight of me, and I ended up out in the shipping lanes.
Whoa.
Yeah. Whoa. No kidding. So needless to say, that was the end of that relationship because I thought, I can't trust this guy. So what you're saying is it's the person, but it's also the equipment or, whatever that foundation is. There's some elements there that go into creating integrity. And what we're really focusing on today is professional integrity and what that looks like. But let's distinguish. Do you see a difference between professional integrity and personal integrity?
There is to an extent, but I think that line is getting more and more blurred in our culture, especially with how much social media can impact a person's employment. So what you post online can affect whether or not you have a job tomorrow. And we've become more open and more, available to the rest of the community and the world to see who we are. So there is an issue if you are building a business or a practice of some sort that is based on trust, dependability, reliability, and then somehow something personally surfaces that goes counter to that. You've created that lack of trust. That's like, someone losing sight of you when you're diving or your belayer's not paying attention. All of a sudden there's this question mark. Are they actually being real when they're at work, or are they just faking it at work to do what they have to do, but they're really someone else otherwise. And I think to some extent, we all turn it on for work and then we're ourselves otherwise because we have to. You can't completely be yourself as you are hanging out with your friends in a professional setting. But there should be, I think, some connection between the two that's consistent. I'm in a small town myself, and since I meet people constantly, I'm at the point where if I go to the grocery store, I have to dress up. Because if I show up in scrubs, but they see me in a suit, otherwise, it's not the same. And it just puts that question mark in their minds.
Yeah. I used to live in a very small town, and I remember that if I went to the grocery store, I was very mindful. I can't go in my in my t-shirt and flip-flops and get away with it. Although I do sometimes, because I also feel strongly that we just need to have a personal life and a little bit of separateness there. But, this is making me aware of a conversation we had in one of our team meetings this week. We were talking through what experience do we want our prospects and our clients to have with us in their initial contact. And one of our team members said, and I can't remember her exact words, but it was something about that tied to this concept of integrity, that the experience is the same no matter who they're talking to on the team. And so, it's not, when it comes to professional integrity as business owners, we want our team to function as a whole as well. And so who is on that team impacts the integrity and what they're putting out there in social media and what they're doing on their downtime, because we do live in a very public world nowadays, does tie into how the integrity of the company is perceived as a whole.
Yeah, and so we have to be mindful of that. I don't want to put up the idea that, you have to always have that game face on 24/7, that people recognize that you get to wind down and have your personal life, and there's a certain level of privacy that you should have. But we have to be cognizant that at least the character that we're portraying at work is the same character that we have personally. Because people are doing business with us personally now.
Yes, business is personal. And we really believe at Tap the Potential in authenticity. And even here on the Profit by Design podcast, it's about, we just try to display confident vulnerability, be who we are, and be authentic. Because there's so much out there where people feel like, you use the word game face, where people feel like they have to put their game face on all the time. That does not feel good as an individual to have to be doing that.
Mm-hmm. No, that's true. A funny story about that. I remember a friend of mine, this is years back in Washington State. They worked at they were in management, one of the big stores, discount store. And someone came to return beef jerky and was complaining the whole time that the beef jerky tasted so horrible that it tasted like dog food. It was the worst jerky he'd ever bought. He couldn't stand it. And, the customer service rep was very kind, very understanding, and just processed the return. And when the gentleman left, she turned to her associate and showed her the bag, and it was dog treats that he had purchased and ate himself, not realizing what he had done. So if you're in that position, right, the customer service rep taking this return, the authentic thing to do would just to be laughing at this guy and tell him, dude, you bought dog treats. That's why.
Wow. Yeah.
But you can't. So what do you do? And I'm not even sure what the right answer was. I know that across the board, no matter what you bring back to the store, they're just going to be kind to you. So at least you have the same experience, whether you're in the right or the wrong. Now, maybe this guy needed to know, hey, you need to read the package, or at least put your glasses on.
Poor guy. Oh my goodness. Well, yeah, the consistency of the experience and that you're going to be treated kind as a customer. One of the things that you pointed out to me that I thought was a very interesting thing for us to be paying attention to is how our systems in our business and our business processes demonstrate integrity and how this all ties together. So can you share some thoughts on that?
Yeah. So from the moment I meet someone and start having a conversation, there's two sides, two competing thoughts. The one thought could be, I really need this business. I'm at a point where, maybe it's been a slow month. Maybe I need to, whatever it is. And here's a potential client that could actually, change this streak I'm in, and things can go, well, maybe that's the position I'm in. That will color the way I speak with them and what I bring to them if I'm just going off the cuff. Now, if my presentation from the front and then the way I even meet them has to do with I'm a professional assisting with your needs and the services that I think would best suit your business, if my attitude is one of I need you to make my life better, that's going to come across, and that is not consistent with the brand that I'm trying to bring across. So that's the first thing is people sense that desperateness and they start feeling this guy's a salesman. Not that sales is bad, but they get that greasy salesman feeling that they're not interested in at all, right? I can't trust you. I'm not sure what you're trying to get. I don't need a used car. So you have to start from the very beginning that everyone I talk to, I have a process in the way I communicate, and that process favors my client, and it's consistent from beginning all the way through to whether we close the deal or complete the project or just, become referral partners or don't do business at all and don't stay connected. But the image that I portray from the beginning to the end, even the words that I choose have to be consistent.
Well, and on the Profit by Design podcast, the key word is design. And so we have to design our businesses around the experience that we want to have as the owners of the business, but also the experience that we want our clients and customers to have. And so when we start with a real clear intention of here is the experience we're trying to deliver, and then build the systems in to support that, then that consistency is there, and there is that feeling of integrity and trust. Trust is that foundation that we're trying to get to.
Exactly. And trust is why people do business with us. They know us, they trust us, and they can even like you, but if they don't trust you, you're not going to have that connection that means we're going to actually do any kind of business relationship together. So if you put yourself in the position of the client and what their experience is like with you and how, every time if you're on the opposite side, so if you're thinking from their perspective, it really changes how you experience your own business. And I think the first time I really realized this was actually when we were working in real estate in California. We had someone come in to take us through that client experience map. We sat there for an entire day and laid out what happens each time you meet someone and how's that go. And one thing I remember very clearly is, you don't always get the house that you want, right? You put in that offer and you lose, or you get halfway through and there's something wrong. The inspection comes back and you're like, wow, there's huge cracks in the foundation that are going to cost too much to repair. And this was the dream house. We have to move, and everything else that goes into that. From the buyer's perspective, it's a very stressful situation. From the real estate professional's perspective, it's just business. We do this constantly, and I can see the process from here to the end. It's going to be okay. I know exactly how it's going to work out. We'll work out the details. From someone who doesn't do this every day, this is stressful. And one thing that we learn to do is when you lose that initial deal or something goes wrong, that was the time that we would send a gift card. Not when everything went great and we won and we're closed, but let's give them something when the emotional level has plummeted, because that changes the experience. Now, what that also says is when I told you at the beginning that I'm going to walk you through the home buying process step by step, and it's the same now in what I do today. When I say I'm going to take you through the entire process from here until the end of life, whatever it is, I'm going to be there every step of the way. That also means I have to understand how you're feeling, and that's taking care of you and providing the right response at that time. So that's a sense of consistency that builds trust.
Yeah. And I love what you're saying about being mindful of those low points and how you can jump in during those low points to provide support, because it's very easy to, like you said, you've been through this 1,000 times, if not more, and you know what's on the other side. And so to just give some words of platitude, like it's going to be okay, we're going to get you through this, yada, 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 that's not sufficient to pull a client through that low point. So sending a gift card or doing something else that's very mindful of what they're going through.
Right. I mean, even a phone call, even just think, we're not talking business, just wanted to encourage you. I know what you're going through and been here multiple times. and we have a process for this. And I think that terminology, we have a process for this, and then you actually demonstrate that process, that engenders trust in a way that, no one else seems to. They're just kind of, you feel like, even if people do, you might feel like your competitors, they're experiencing, a lower level of service. They're just making it up as they go. And if they run into a wall, they don't know what to do.
I want to share a resource here for our profit designers as we're talking about this. We're using a book on the Tap the Potential team this quarter called Never Lose a Customer Again by Joey Coleman. And he walks through the 8 phases of emotional phases that our clients go through as they're coming onboarding with us in the first 100 days. And so we had our first meeting about this week, and a couple of powerful questions that we're using that I want to share with our profit designers, because I think it ties right in here. And that is, what is the experience we want our clients to have with us during each phase of this process? Yeah.
I'm thinking about the whole onboarding process. And for me now, when I work with people, I try to work on a quarterly rotation, so that we're revisiting our plans and our processes every 3 months. And I want that sense to be, he's taking care of things that I don't have time to or understanding to look at, right? So there's this diminishing, if they don't hear from me, if we don't have the connection or any kind of contact over time, it's not that you just pick up where you left off. It's almost like a declining slope of experience. And if they don't hear from me, in a positive sense, at least, they're not even sure I'm doing anything. So that you got to keep that it's from the very beginning, from the onboarding process. And I think when we talk about that onboarding and the experience onboarding, that experience to me is retrospective. Everything can go great when I bring them on, but if 6 months down the road, I didn't keep the promises I made, or they felt I made in the first 3 months, first 2 months, now that whole onboarding experience is tainted.
Absolutely. And so, designing your processes so that there are checkpoints. Every quarter, we do the same thing with our clients when they come into our small group program. We design a year-long action plan that lays out the top 5 steps that they're going to take, that we're going to guide them through to hit their overall goal, which usually is being more profitable and having more freedom and not working 90 hours a week in their business, something to that effect. But then we are checking back every quarter and returning to the overall goal, the quarterly goals, and how did you do this quarter and what's next for next quarter? Because it is too easy to let a whole year go by. And even though we're meeting every other week, to lose sight of that overall goal. And then the client feels like, oh, what happened to that goal we had at the beginning? We're way off track. And Mike Michalowicz, the author of Profit First and Pumpkin Plan, shares this beautiful diagram, and we're on a podcast, so it's very hard. I usually draw it out for people, but give you a sense that you have a piece of paper and you lay it landscape view, and you have a big circle on one side and another circle on the other side, and you draw a line between the two, so it looks like a dumbbell. And the circle on the left side represents where you are now, and the circle on the right side represents your vision and where you're headed. And that straight line is the fastest way to achieving the vision. Well, if you start drawing lines on the circle on the right that make it look like a sunshine, like a kid's drawing of a sun with little rays coming out around that circle. And so every day in our business, we are faced with decisions that look like they're somewhat aligned with our path and our vision where we're headed, but they may be just slightly off course and going maybe up a little bit to the right, like a 30-degree angle off course. And that doesn't seem like a big deal, but if we carry that out over time, we end up very far away from our vision. And that points out to me how important it is that we are having these regular touch points that you're talking about, Andre, to check in and make sure, hey, are we still on the same page? Are we still moving in the direction we said we were going to head? And what can I do as the person, the professional who's supporting you? What can I be doing to help you stay on course?
Yeah, and I think you hit on something very important there, Sabrina, in that it's a process. It's a process of developing our process. Like, you don't just say, okay, I'm going to have integrity and change everything and fix everything. You discover those chinks and those gaps along the way. And you discover, hey, I'm a little off course. And a lot of times you don't realize that until you get feedback from an employee or an associate or a client that makes you recognize that's not the way I wanted to go. That's not what I intended to portray. I need to move back.
Exactly.
And it's a process to develop the process. That's what I'm trying to get at. It's kind of funny, but that's why we're growing along the way.
Yes.
Personally.
Well, and the other thing that I think is important is having somebody else besides a client walk through the process to give you that feedback. So we have several members on our team right now auditing different aspects of our initial client onboarding system from the client perspective. And I also have a Mastery Fortress group that I'm in Profit First Professionals. And we decided that we are going to audit each other's websites. We're going to take 1 month, each person will have their website featured, and I raised my hand to go first. I was like, oh, this is awesome. So, I'm coming up with the questions that I want our members to look at my website and give me feedback on. And it's all around this concept of integrity. So I'm able to state, here's our intention. Here's what we're trying to accomplish. As you come onto the website, do you see this happening? Do you have that feeling? And do you know where to go? Because we business owners are so much in it, we can't see when there's inconsistency.
Right. There's a book, I'm trying to think of the author's name. She wrote Fierce Conversations and Fierce Leadership. And I'm going to look it up here in a minute. But one of the points that she makes in Fierce Conversations is and it's a military term, but there's a difference between the official truth and ground truth. Ground truth is if you go talk to the privates on the ground that were in the engagement, they'll tell you what they saw, what they experienced. They'll tell you how it is, between each other and their leadership and how it's going. But then there's the stuff that you put on the PowerPoint slides. This is the stuff that we put in briefings. These are the statistics. This is how well we did. This is where we're having issues and things. Those two are often not the same, and they don't necessarily need to be the same. It's not that we need to put every, concern and complaint and everything out publicly, but we have to recognize that there's a difference. They're both true, but they're not identical. And you could have something happening at the ground truth level that's going to affect the rest of the organization. And unless you're having these conversations within your organization and with your prospects and your clients and your partners, whoever you're working with, to find out what's it really like interacting with me and my business. I mean, down to what's it like walking in the front door, right? That'll give you the ground truth and how things are going. And then you can figure out from there, is there a gap that we need to deal with at that level?
Yeah. And having that be a continuous part of our process. So this isn't like on the Tap the Potential team. I don't think that this is a once and done activity. I imagine that we're going to be coming back through our first 100 days, every year and looking at it and making improvements. And especially as we add new members to the team, I think that's the best opportunity is to have them audit. And it's also part of training them so they come to understand, here's what we're seeking to deliver. And as they step into that role of, the critic to tell us and give us feedback, I think they're also learning what we're trying to deliver at a deeper level themselves.
Definitely. And too, as you're going through and you're developing what that process looks like so that it's consistent, you're going to realize that there are people that you're doing business with that aren't experiencing what your new clients are experiencing. And one concept that I heard a few weeks ago that just made sense was re-onboard your current clients every 2 years. Start over with them because they've probably forgotten everything that you discussed in the beginning anyway. And you have a new process by now that's developed. You've organically been growing it. So they need to come back into the company as if they're new clients.
Yes. Absolutely. Well, in Tap the Potential, we do an analysis of the business at the very beginning of our work with clients. And, we have some folks who have been with us over more than 2 years. I have some clients who've been with me, I think, over 10 years by now. And the action plan that we developed 2 years ago is no longer relevant because that business has transformed considerably from where it was. And so I think it's a critical part of our work together to be updating those action plans. I would like to do them every year. That idea of every 2 years re-onboarding, because it is, I think about what we do differently now with our brand new clients than what we were doing 2 years ago. We're constantly learning and improving. So we've really improved and honed that process.
And they're changing too, right?
Yes.
So you could be operating on the goals and intentions that they had when they first came to work with you. You're still working on those notes and those plans. And by now, it might be that some of that's obsolete or things have changed and you need to switch focus. And unless you have that onboarding discussion that you had to begin with, you won't even know that. And they won't even know that necessarily. It's not until you have that conversation that it brings it out of the client that they realize, oh, yeah, we need to do something different.
Yes, absolutely. There's another interesting topic that you and I intended to get into in today's conversation, and I want to go there next. And that's the importance of the development of character in ourselves and in our employees as our first priority. So tell me your thoughts on that, Andre.
I think, I was thinking about that. So it's interesting to me how much, if you look at business books and personal development books, at least as I've been reading, and so in the past 10 years, but I've gone back and looked at business books from, the 70s, the 80s, and moving forward, the two are blending together. So kind of the cultural conversation about business and personal development are coming together. We're in this big humanism movement, and biohacking and mind hacking and everything else that we can do to improve ourselves and reach our fullest potential is becoming more and more a reality, at least in our culture in the West. So it becomes a natural flow from how I'm growing into what I'm doing for my work, what I'm doing for business. And now what I'm realizing is, since people are doing business with me, yes, they need to trust my company. They need to love the product that I'm providing. But ultimately, they have to say, I trust you and I want to do business with you. You're sharp as a tack. You're a force to be reckoned with, and I want you in my corner. That also means that what my primary offering is myself. And I used to hate that. There's an ongoing mantra in real estate, especially, that says, first you have to sell yourself. And I always push back going, I'm not for sale. I don't like this. It feels real cheesy. And then you'd see, I used to get after real estate agents for putting their picture up on their billboard. And now my wife has a billboard for pictures on it. So.
But that ties to businesses.
Exactly. And that's what I finally came to the understanding is like, yeah, they have, once they've seen you a million times driving by that billboard, and if you can engender that sense of I'm trustworthy and continue it if they meet you in person or by phone, well, all of that, everything that we just talked about, that's character. That's who you are. And that's how people are deciding whether or not they're going to work with you. So it actually becomes a primary thing that we have to develop. We have to develop the best person that we can be, understanding this is the funny thing. You can't do it to get business because then that becomes manipulation and you're faking it. You have to do it because you realize I really want to be the best version of me I can. And that will, as a byproduct, become the business that you build. And that also means that we have to do that within the organization. So if we have employees, if we in partnership, their process has to fit into mine as well. So if I'm working with an associate, let's say I'm referring business out, I have to make sure that the experience my client has with that person is consistent with the experience they have with me. If they're on a different planet than I am, if they do business differently or have a different perspective or treat people differently, if they don't have the personal service that I provide, we can't work together. And then I have to have a process within my company that says my employees have the opportunity to grow, and I want them to grow. I don't want them to be locked in the rules say I do this, our policy is this, and they're stuck in a box where they can't change on their own to be a better service provider, to be a better spouse, to be a better parent. All that feeds back into business.
Absolutely. And I want to comment on two aspects of this thought that you're having, and that is that our core values, our immutable laws that we have, as business owners in the hiring process and how to hire the best, I talk about how important it is to identify what those core values are and make sure that we are hiring team members whose core values align with our top 3 to 5 core values. And those really become the immutable laws of the business. And if we bring on clients and customers whose immutable laws align with ours, then we have team members, we have a business owner, and we have clients and customers, and the immutable laws are there and there's alignment. And that, again, creates consistency and integrity. It builds trust. The other piece, though, that you're talking about is the work on ourselves that we have to do, and we have to prioritize that. And I want to share with you, when I just took a 6-week vacation. And when I came back from that 6-week vacation, I was very aware that in our business, we had started going towards the urgent and losing sight of the importance, especially in our one-to-one meetings where we were prioritizing client service over personal development. And here's what I think is key as a coach. When I went through coach training, I noticed there were a lot of coaches out there who weren't walking their talk. They were trying to help other people grow and reach their potential, but they weren't in coaching. And I thought that's ludicrous. How can I be a good coach if I don't get my own coaching? So that's been a core value all through, is walk my talk. And so as we've brought on team members at Tap the Potential, I think our strategists, they have a hard job because they are, having to coach our clients, but I'm also holding them accountable for their own professional growth and walking the talk themselves. And so we've switched our one-to-one meeting agenda and moved up the talk about career goals and professional goals to the beginning of the agenda. That used to be at the end of the agenda, and we were always rushed and lightly touching on it. So now it's first, and I'm calling this veggies first, where we have to do the things that sustain us first, like eating our vegetables, so that we can be our best for our clients. If we're not taking care of ourselves and growing ourselves, we're not going to be at our best for our clients.
Yeah, definitely. And then, I think as customers ourselves, so if we're going to a store, if we're, whatever experience we're having, if we're hiring a professional to assist us with whatever needs that we have, tax professional, law, whatever, we understand that. We instinctively are analyzing whether or not this is someone I want to work with. And those are the factors that we're looking at. It's turning it around when we have to realize we need to do that ourselves too. And that's just part of human nature, I think, to push that off and just work on, like you said, the urgent instead of the important. And it's really funny that you call it eating your veggies first, because Angela and I have been going through a lot of nutritional learning and health learning and making some major changes. And that's one of the things, like, I've always been, give me a huge steak and a little bit of something else if I have to on the side. And now it's I even took a picture of the first salad because it's a family joke that I hate salad. It's rabbit food. It's twigs and underbrush. Like, I am not interested. And now every meal is this massive plate of, green stuff and things that I feel like I have to work too hard to digest. But it's transforming everything. Just making that change, just saying we're going to eat our veggies first and you're going to have a lot of them, is having these ongoing effects as far as like thinking better and feeling better and sleeping better and everything else. Like, that's it. That's all I had to do.
Yeah. Veggies first, Andre.
Veggies first.
Like, rabbit food. It makes a difference.
It is. Yeah. So these are small tweaks, right? This is the process of developing our process. These are small tweaks that we have to make just to improve what we do. And yeah, there was something else you said that I was just thinking, walking the walk versus just the talk. I have this incredible presentation that took me a couple months to develop, and then one day just kind of congealed, right? And I show it to every client that I feel like is going to be a really good fit. I want to make sure that their philosophy is the same as mine. The basic idea is that my clients are building a kingdom, but that kingdom has a larger purpose. They want to serve something better. It's no longer about just taking care of my own. And I haven't shown it to Angela because we've just been going two different directions for so long recently. So finally got a chance to show it to her, and she nodded and went along with it. And then I asked her what she thought. She goes, well, it's really good, but how are you going to make sure that it's actually your walk and not just your talk? I was like, yep, leave it to her, of course. Because she sees the reality of everything. And there's gaps that, when you're married, you recognize much more fully and they seem much larger. And we have to keep that idea first. So she actually was challenging me to do exactly what you're saying. Keep that development of your own philosophy and who you are, who you've been called to be first. And the business is secondary.
Yes. Well, and, for myself, one of the things that I've done at Tap the Potential as I've grown it over the years is I don't roll out any service for our clients until I've tested it on myself first. And that's really helpful because I can see right away where the resistance points are going to be because I experience those resistance points. But it also helps me identify where my own gaps are. And I think that's been the greatest gift that being a coach has given me is I am forced to walk the walk.
Right.
And it's made me a better person. And just because there are gaps doesn't mean we're not walking our talk. It means that we have to be aware of those gaps and then start working to do something about them. And then I think that makes us much more effective and powerful as we're sharing that process with others.
Exactly. Yeah, that book I was saying, Fierce Conversations, the author's name is Susan Scott, and she's got well over 10,000 hours, if not more, coaching international CEOs on how to have conversations in leadership. Incredible books. In fact, I love the title, Fierce Leadership, subtitle, we'll pull it up here. Fierce Leadership, a bold alternative to the worst best practices of business today. It's very interesting, but one of the things that she says is one of the worst best practices is holding people accountable, which, gave me a double take because I've heard that my entire life. She says we need to hold people able, not accountable, understanding that it's a growing process for everyone involved. And as leaders, if we're working with people, you want to hold them able to do what you're calling them or what they are required to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's a different perspective than accountability, because accountability basically says if you don't do it, you're in trouble.
Right.
There's going to be a consequence. Holding you able says, well, if it doesn't go right, we're going to work to improve it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's a mastery framework that I really believe in. That is the idea that mistakes are learning opportunities. And so if we operate from the assumption that we've hired the best, we've done our due diligence, and we've brought on A players to our team, and then there's a problem, first let's just step back and understand why the problem is there and what's happening, and what support does that team member need to be able to resolve that problem. And let's, holding them as able. And, one of the courses that we teach is called Coach Approach. And when you take a coach approach with another human being, you are holding them as whole, competent, capable, and complete. And that means they're able to solve the problems with support, with input, with good, powerful questions, but they are able.
Right. Yeah. And just what that does, hearing it, if I was that employee, that person, it just gives you that sense of, okay, I'm going to try. I'm going to step out. I'm going to go for it because I have support. I have people I can rely on, and there's going to be guidance and help there.
So I want to get you to talk a little bit about some of the other activities that you have going on. And you and Angela, you guys are so highly active energy people. So many interesting things you're involved with, but you also have a nonprofit where you work with service members and autistic children. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Okay. Yeah. So that's been a little bit on hold most recently. But what we had found when we were up this was back a few years ago, and we were in Washington State. I was a chaplain then with the National Guard, and we were both counseling together. We have backgrounds in established counseling centers in the past and stuff. So we were counseling service members, and what happened, and I had never heard of equine assisted learning at the time or equine assisted therapies. I didn't know they existed, but we had horses. Angela used to raise world-class Morgans and then got out of it for a while, and then we got horses again. And what was interesting is some of our counselees, I guess you can say, found out that we had horses and they were interested in seeing them and just coming over. And when you're a counselor, you get this point where you're like, there's nothing left that I can tell you. You just have to start taking action. Like, what is the barrier? And you can get very frustrated in that because it just seems like people won't change, right?
Yes, I've experienced that. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So what was interesting is when they just went to spend time with the horse, and they weren't horse people. But as we started teaching them, and we use personally training our horses, we use a system of natural horsemanship. As we started teaching them how to communicate with the horse, the thing that would come up in them was like a focused, almost tangible experience of everything that we would talk about in the counseling sessions. And now they had to, so we call the horse a mirror. That mirror would bring out, here's what we're discussing. And then there's clarity and there's understanding. And they would start dealing with things internally. We had nothing to do with it. You know, it would just be part of that experience would bring it up, and they would start working through things. And that's when I discovered, hey, there's something here, and looked more into it. We found out about equine assisted learning. And then I had a fellow chaplain buddy of mine came over. We went to school together, and he brought his kids, and he had autism himself, and he had a couple of children with autism. His oldest son, we sent him out to do some we call them games, but play a few games with the horse. And all of a sudden he calmed down, centered, and became real steady. And he had a connection with that horse that no adult has ever had. I couldn't believe it. I'm watching, I have my phone out. I'm filming this kid doing things with this horse that I couldn't get the horse to do. And it's just this connection, and he was just stable. So and people have discovered this before. I know they do that as well. So we started doing that just naturally. When we eventually formed Harmony Skills Ranch as the concept of doing that with people, whether they're autistic or service members dealing with PTSD. I usually leave the D off. I prefer to call that post-traumatic stress because it's not a disorder. It is a normal response to an abnormal situation. And anyone can have that experience. Something about working with horses or even chickens, or I've heard of people using mules and donkeys and different animals, because that animal responds to your character so quickly, you're forced to experience it yourself. And then you have the ability to do something.
The mirror, that's powerful. I've had the opportunity in several different contexts to take part in equine assistant learning and also be a facilitator. And I'm not a trained facilitator, so I don't want to portray that in any way. When I was in Wyoming, we had a leadership group called Leadership Fremont County, and we did a day at a horse ranch and as a group interacted with the horses to work on our leadership. And it is amazing to stand in the arena with a horse and see your leadership style reflected back to you. And then what are you going to do with it? It's a really powerful experience. I want to offer to our listeners, if you ever have that opportunity to do something like that, to grow your leadership, it's, one day or a few hours with a horse in an equine assisted learning experience can be very powerful.
Yeah, it really can change you. It changed my life. I think my personal development really started when we got that first horse, and I had to learn to stop trying to make the horse do what I want her to do and learn to communicate.
Yes.
And speak her language. And everything else started flowing from there for me personally.
Well, and I had a very similar experience of wanting to force something, and you can't force a horse and you can't force people. And so having to step back and look at, okay, how do I lead? How do I earn the respect of the horse without forcing things?
Once you know horses, and it's unfortunate, I'll see them every now and then. Once you know horses, you can see a horse that's been literally broken, where their will and their spirit is gone, and they just do what they have to do to survive. And you can tell it's fear. And sometimes these are horses that you'll see winning big major prizes. And I don't want to say too much, but you're like, yeah, that's great. And I think we do that as well. You can totally, you can lose your soul in the process of winning the world. It's a devastating thing to witness or be a part of.
Well, and, just thinking about in workplace interactions, we can force team members to do certain things, but if it's taking away their spirit, their will, it shows. I mean, that's where people become disengaged. And we try at Tap the Potential to be so mindful of working from strengths. And when we are shifting roles and responsibilities, I'm always asking, what are you doing that sucks the life right out of you? Because we need to get that away from you. I don't ever want our team members losing their spirit in their work.
That's awesome. That's great. I mean, that really shows a care to, for the people that are working for you.
Yeah. Well, and that's what we're trying to walk our talk, because we are trying to help other business owners create great places to work. And so if we're not doing that at Tap the Potential, how are we going to help others? Andre, you also have another company, and I believe it's a nonprofit, Diverse Management Solutions, that provides services and wisdom to other entrepreneurs. So I want to hear about that.
Yeah, DMS, it's actually just a C Corp. Originally formed it to help manage our own business. There are certain strategies that make sense when you're a business owner, and, all that stuff that you have to do, but you don't get paid for. It was a way to I'm going to do that service through that and get paid for it. But then it grew from there into just helping with, here and there. It's not it's kind of a side project, really. As people come up and they're interested, I need help with marketing, or we've done a website, things like that, whatever can help. Sometimes it's just a matter of having the conversations like this with people. A lot of times it's not even something that I'm technically charging for. It's just where I would categorize, hey, you should read this book and let's discuss it. That kind of thing. I seem to meet a lot of young entrepreneurs who are getting started. And by young, I mean, they haven't done this before. They could be in their 40s and they're finally saying, I'm going to start my own business. But, as you're getting started, there are some things that we need help with. It could be just how to do accounting, what software to use. If you're going to do any of your own basic accounting, that's when I start. I mean, I have copies of Profit First that I just hand people. Like, you start here before you even get going. Please read this book.
Good for you.
Yeah, and it's funny. I was actually talking to a guy. He was starting a lawn business, and now he's starting 3 other businesses. I can't seem to get him to calm down. His wife and I are trying to get him to slow down, but he won't. But I gave him Pumpkin Plan and Profit First when we first started doing business together. And then he called me the other day and he said he just passed it on to someone else. I'm like, oh, wow.
That's awesome.
That's really neat. So anything like that, where I just feel like it's the avenue I use to help people getting going in business. It's not even something I can tell you there's a business plan for or a specific purpose, but it's been there as a vehicle.
Wow. I really appreciate that you're doing that, because on the Profit by Design podcast and our profit designers, we are so interested in learning and helping one another and sharing the things we've learned. When I started out in business, I wish someone would have handed me a copy of Profit First and the Pumpkin Plan. Oh my goodness.
Oh, me too. Holy cow. I can't.
So, Andre, I'm curious, what would you have done differently at the start of your business if you knew about pumpkin planning and Profit First? What are some things that come to mind?
A few things I would have done from the very beginning. Day one, I definitely would have set up the accounts and then had that. Because just like Mike says in the book, my habit is if my balance, I check the app and it says I have money, I'm going to spend it. And if I go, if I feel like I need equipment, I'm going to finance it if they'll give me the loan. Because I'm kind of blending the two books together, right? My mentality is I'm not spending money, I'm investing in my future without a concept of what's going to happen. So I would have had the accounts. I would have started a retirement plan of some kind. I have been self-employed almost my entire life, professional life. I had a short stint, I was reserves as a chaplain, a couple years that I was active duty, but I didn't use the retirement plan that they provided. So I didn't build that. For me, retirement meant I'm going to build this great business and someday someone's going to buy it from me. And for a time, and that's how most business owners think. When I sit down with an entrepreneur and I ask them, what's your retirement plan? It's like, someday I'm going to sell this beast. That's not a retirement plan. That's a hope. The next question really is, how much does that business depend on you? Because if it's completely dependent on you, if you are the star of the show, you have nothing to sell, unfortunately. Right. So that's what I would have done. I would have had that kind of concept. I would have opened the accounts. I would have started saving for my family's future back then. And I would have started niching and creating something that would be, it's not sustainable, transitional. So what happened to us, one of the big projects that we did back in 2005, I think, is when we started. We were working a lot in foreclosures, and Angela got a call, and they said, who do you use for the maintenance on the foreclosures that you're selling? We need someone to clean the trash out, cut the lawns, fix, holes in the roof, things like that. She goes, I use my husband. I'd never done it, but that's what she told them. And they hired me. So I ended up setting up this maintenance company to maintain these foreclosures. And we were number 2 in the St. Louis region. I had 3 or 4 crews, depending on the month. And I had financed like crazy. I had multiple trucks driving. I was to the point that I was driving a Freightliner to pull a dumpster so that we could clean these houses out and maintain them and turn them. And we were grossing, I think, at the height of it, the company was grossing $500,000. And as far as employees, it was Angela, myself, and 2 of our sons. That was it. So we were doing fine. Now, my thinking at the time was this can't go wrong, right? Because if the housing market has any kinds of issues, foreclosures are going to increase and I'm going to have more business. And if it goes the other way, well, there's always a steady flow of these things anyway. I've always seen it. So no problem. What happened is I went active duty and we did what we thought was the right thing and transitioned 2 of our sons to take over. And then the housing market did what it did in 2008. So November 2007, November 2008, they told us, our clients told us, we freeze operations about this time. And that's fine. You don't want to evict people during Thanksgiving and Christmas. That was normal. We always knew November and December was slow, but they never came back online. So they went through the entire of 2009 with no business, barely surviving. I'm going, what's going on? Well, here's what happened. We had 85% of our business came from one client, and that client's entire business came from Fannie Mae. And since Fannie Mae had all this increase, they were ordered to freeze all operations and just hold the property. So they weren't dealing, this is where all the shadow property came from that we've heard about. So our business literally died and everything got repossessed, everything got shut down, everything fell apart at that point.
So what's the life lesson in that you would share with other entrepreneurs?
So if I had started out with, we're going to set aside our profit, this is our income, this is our savings, this is ours, and we're going to keep that first. And that is not negotiable. This does not go back into the business. This is ours. Then there would have been, okay, we have a cushion. We have something that we can rely on rather than just the business savings that got burned up. That's the first thing. The second thing is don't ever have one client. That was such a huge, and I didn't realize I was doing it at the time because there was so much business coming. And you think, well, no, it's an organization. It's not, no, it was really a client and they could change everything for us in an instant. And it never occurred to me that that's what I had done. And the third thing was stop financing things. Really, we would have been better off making do and finding, if we had expanded our client base, we actually would have had a much more pleasant experience because we were working 80 and 90 hour weeks to do what was required. We would have had the choice of the work that we wanted to do. And we would have done it with equipment that we owned, which means our margin would have been much better. The way it was is if we didn't have consistent business, we wouldn't be able to pay the bills. We had to keep making those payments. And the thinking when you do that is this is going to pay off down the road. I just need to make it through this period. And yeah, when I read the Pumpkin Plan and, Michaela, which described exactly that thinking and what could happen, I'm going, well, here, I'm your case study. I did exactly that.
Something that you said really caught my attention, and it's about our blind spots. When things are going gangbusters in our business, that's when we are most susceptible to those blind spots because you said, we had so much business, we didn't realize we were really dependent on one client. And that, I think there's so much value in having somebody else in your business, not necessarily a business partner, but somebody else in your business asking you questions to explain, where's the business coming from? And explain your whole business model to me, because that process of talking it out will start to reveal those blind spots. But when we're working 90 hours a week, we're not doing our veggies first, we're not sleeping well, we're not doing the things that we need to do to take care of ourselves, that's when we're most susceptible to those blind spots.
Oh, yeah. And, man, if I had had that conversation with someone, again, that I trusted and respected, had experience, that would have changed everything that we were doing. But I never had that, and it's like a riptide. You get caught up in it. I had people working for me, and I'm thinking, you take on that responsibility. You want to keep them working. You don't want to tell them there's nothing that they can do. You've taken on their responsibilities in a sense, right? So now it's just taking you out to sea, and you don't realize it. You have to keep the momentum going to just keep your promises to people and to yourself and to your business and everything else that's going on. And, a riptide will take you way out there and then just leave you. And that's what happened.
And I want to touch on one other thing that you're pointing out. Our profit accounts are the greatest opportunities that we have as business owners to spread our eggs out into different baskets and not put all of our eggs into that one basket, which is the business, and call it our retirement plan. And so a lot of times we'll ask, I had a fun conversation one time with a client in the liquor aisle on a Friday evening at the grocery store. And she pulled me aside and she said, my profit account is really big. I don't know what to do with all this money.
Oh, bummer. What a problem.
What a problem to have. And I said, we're in the liquor aisle at the grocery store on Friday evening. I don't think this is the place to have this conversation, because we might both get attacked in the parking lot on our way out. But let's talk on Monday. And so, I just want to say that as that money starts accumulating in your profit account, start looking at what else can I take care of in my life that I've been neglecting, whether it's retirement accounts, college accounts for kids, life insurance, the basic financial planning that the rest of the world who's not an entrepreneur, they're doing. Sometimes it's their employer funding some of that, but as entrepreneurs, we have to be the ones thinking about those.
Yeah, that's just a responsibility that we all take on when we do this crazy thing of starting our own businesses, building our own little kingdoms.
Yeah. So, Andre, this has been a very enlightening discussion. We went in all kinds of interesting directions here, and I think it's probably been very eye-opening for our profit designers. So, for people who want to connect with you further, how can they find you?
LinkedIn. So it's probably the easiest way. I'm on there pretty often and can see what I'm doing these days on there. So yeah, look me up on LinkedIn. It's whatever that link is, linkedin.com/n/Andre Ong. And it's O-N as in November, G. A lot of people these days think it's an M. And they say, oh, OMG. But no, it's O-N-G. So that's easiest. Or I think you'll have my email as well, right? Which is simple, Andre@andreong.com.
Yes. And so we will put your LinkedIn profile, we'll link to that in our show notes. So it'll be real easy for people to find you. And I've also invited you to join us in the Profit by Design Facebook group.
Perfect.
And that would be a great place for people to continue the conversation with you as well. And you and I were talking before we came on to the interview that you have lots of resources that you can share to support entrepreneurs, and connecting with you in the Facebook group, and then you'll be able to share some resources with them there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That nerd side of me, there's always something that I think other people would benefit from too.
Well, I'm all about we share the learning. Our School of Hard Knocks experiences, they need to benefit somebody else because we earned the School of Hard Knocks. We paid our price for those.
Definitely. Mm-hmm.
So thank you for being with us, Andre.
Thank you. This was wonderful. I appreciate it.
Are you ready to be the leader you need to be to have the business that gives you your life back? If so, you may be a good fit for our small group coaching program at Tap the Potential. You can apply directly by going to profitgift.com. All one word, profitgift.com. What are you waiting for? Your life is waiting for you. Thank you for spending time with us today. Join our conversation in the Profit by Design podcast Facebook group. Share your thoughts on today's episode, ask us questions, and let us know what you want to hear about next. Visit our website at profitbydesignpodcast.com to access resources from our sponsors and tools we've created for you. Subscribe to the show on whatever platform you're listening to right now. There's a subscribe button right there. Go ahead and hit it so that you always get a notification when we release a new episode. And finally, share our podcast with a friend if you know a friend who would enjoy it. Thanks again for listening. This is real life business. Keep your chin up, keep moving forward. You got this.